Okay, our 101 class. Today we are going to be making watercolor mandalas. So I want to talk a little bit about what a mandala is and why we would want to draw one. So a the word mandala is a Sanskrit word that means circle. So in its very, very basic form, basically a mandala is anything that is any type of art that's created in a circle. The type of mandala that you generally see and the type that we are going to make is a circle, but there's one step further. It's also got radial symmetry. So radial symmetry, if you remember, I can't remember if we talked about radial symmetry yet. So symmetry itself is when you have an image that is the same on this side and this side. If you were to cut it in half, it mirrors itself, right? That's a very perfectly symmetrical, balanced image. You can have other types of balance as well. You can have asymmetrical balance. So that means that your artwork is still balanced, but it's not perfectly symmetrical on each side. You might have a small dark shape on this side and a bigger light shape on this side, and they balance each other out. So different things have different visual weight. The third type of balance is the third type of symmetry is radial symmetry. And that takes symmetry that's like two things on the same, when you divide it, it's the same. It takes it one step further. So instead of just two sides, you've got a whole circle. You've got many sides. You can divide it into as many different pieces of the pie as you can imagine. And each of those pie pieces in the circle are going to be symmetrical to the one next to it. So what we're going to start with is a big circle on a piece of paper, and then we are going to divide that circle like a pie into at least 8 slices. You may do more if you'd like to make your mandala a little bit more complicated. And once we've got that, we are going to create our design. So I'm going to pause the video here, get my supplies ready. You will need a piece of paper, a ruler or some type of straight edge, something to make a perfect circle with. So probably something you want to trace. I don't expect you to draw a perfect circle. So find something that is big enough to fill most of this space. Make a circle. Look at a plate or something of that nature. Find something in your house. Be creative. So that you're going to trace your circle, and then you are going to use your ruler and find the center of the circle. That might be a little bit harder if you don't have an actual ruler, but do your best. And then we will divide that into slices. All right? Alright, so I'm going to start my design I'm just going to pick any of these pie slices, and I think I'm going to make a circle here that touches both of those edges like that. Now what I need to do next is just to repeat that same circle. I'm going to try to make it the same shape and in the same place on my pie slice. Sometimes that's easier said than done. So you can go slow and draw light. Draw light till you get it right. So when we did our Zentangle design, that kind of prepped you for doing this project because we are going to be making patterns again. And I've already noticed that my circle is getting quite small compared to my first one. So I'm probably going to redo this one. I'm not afraid to erase. and put a little higher up in my pie slice so that it is bigger and more like this one. Still a little small, but it's better. If you have a compass, compasses can be helpful to have some extra guidelines to keep all your shapes the same size. So I'll clean up those lines a little bit, but that's the idea, that you're repeating whatever you do in the first one into all of them. So now if I create a line like that, I think I'll make it kind of like a petal. Now I'm going to make that same line. I want to make it about the same height and the same width in each one of these sections. It's getting a little fat. Don't be afraid to turn your paper. I think it's very helpful because depending on how you hold your pencil, the shapes you make get distorted when you're drawing down versus drawing to the side. So however you make that first shape, you should turn your paper as you go, and you're going to have better luck keeping all the things even. I can see a lot of unevenness already in mine, and I'm going to have to be accepting that I can't draw them all perfectly the same. If I wanted to draw them all perfectly the same, I would just use a computer or something. This is supposed to look hand-drawn. So it's okay if they're not exact, but do your best. And I'm going to do my best. Remember that you will be painting these, so don't shade it with your pencil. You could maybe add some shading later, but I suggest actually after you paint, you might want to come around and use your like a Sharpie, like a fine tip Sharpie, and emphasize some of the shapes and patterns. You're not stuck only in this pie shape. Maybe you want to do a shape that extends two pie shapes. That's okay too, as long as it repeats. You see how it's starting to form a pattern. I'm not planning this whole pattern in my head first before I start drawing. I'm letting it kind of evolve and grow. So I'm going to come back on and check in with you once I've got more of a pattern and I'm ready to start painting. Alright class, so I just wanted to show you that I have finished my version of a mandala. I kept on adding to my design until I had filled up all the way to the top, and then I added some little shapes here and there to add some details. But I kept my shapes big enough that I can paint them easily. I don't want you to do too many little tiny details where you find it really difficult to watercolor paint. So I'm going to start my watercolor painting and I will check back in with you soon. So our next step is to paint with watercolors, and I want you to think about the color scheme that you're going to be using for this. I want the whole thing painted, and I want you to plan out your color scheme in advance. So here's our color wheel. Think about, are you going to do primarily warm colors? Are you going to do primarily cool colors? Or are you going to use them in a way that
some of the warm colors will stand out against the cool colors. You don't have to choose only one, but I want you to be mindful of it and plan it out. I think I'm going to start with warm colors in the center and move kind of towards cool colors, but then do warm colors in my background so it stands out from the edge of my mandala. So that's my general plan. And for watercolor painting, if you have tube watercolors, that's great. For just making it easier, I'm going to use this pan watercolor. I have a bigger brush and a littler brush, and I might need an even smaller brush than this too. Haven't decided yet, but it looks like some of my spots are pretty small. I have my water cup and I have a paper towel. So my first step is to get my brush wet and pick my first color. I'm going to start in the middle and move out just like I did when I drew it. So I'm actually going to start with some yellow. If you have really small areas, you're probably just going to do what is called wet on dry. But if you have some larger spots, you might want to try doing wet on wet. And if you don't remember what that is, I'll show you. So just for that little spot, like say I'm going to do wet on wet for these bigger shapes. I'm just wetting that shape with just water, and then I'm going to take my color, get some color on my brush, and add it to just that shape that I put water on. And what that does is the water kind of sits on top of the surface and allows the paint to spread around in that shape, and you get like some interesting texture and swirls if you mix color. So you can experiment with that a little bit. All right, my friends, I'm finished with my painting. I did kind of what I said I would do, in that I started with some warmer colors and then ended with some cooler colors towards the outer edge. But then I was going to do some warm colors in the background, and I kind of decided to go a different route. I liked how vibrant everything was looking, and I wanted it to stand out even more. So I ended up using some black mixed with a little bit of purple, and I feel like that gives it almost that rose window look, like if you were inside one of those cathedrals and the sun was shining through the window and making it look very vibrant, and the wall would look black in comparison. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson and learned a little bit about radial symmetry and mandalas. I look forward to seeing your mandalas.